Hey everyone, this is Jason Dunn from Smartphone Thoughts, and this is my review video of the AT&T Samsung Jack. So if you watched my unboxing video, you will have seen all the basic specifications, about this device. So I'm not going to go into any of those details. I'm just going to tell you about how I actually used this device. So AT&T was kind enough to send it to me for a little bit over a month, so I got a chance to actually use it full time as my one and only Windows Mobile smartphone, and I hooked it up to my Exchange account, my hosted Exchange account, and everything worked out really well. So let me talk about, I guess, the experience of using the phone. Now, in terms of the speed, so this machine, or this smartphone rather, has one of the fastest processors out there for Windows Mobile standard smartphones. A lot of Windows Mobile standard smartphones, again being the non-touch screen variety, so this is not a touch phone, they tend to use slower processors, they tend to have less RAM, all of that kind of stuff, and this is one of the first smartphones that really kind of pushes the envelope in terms of the hardware. Samsung did a good job in terms of making sure that this phone had everything under the hood that a lot of other touch screen phones have. So does it show? Yeah, absolutely it does. When I'm going through and using the phone and my day-to-day stuff, I found everything was really snappy and really high performance. I mean, I can flip through photos here relatively easily. Everything feels snappy. Zooming in also works quite well here. I'll just show you. I'll zoom in and you can see that it doesn't even do sort of like a chunky zoom, like it actually allows you to pan around the image, and everything is quite smooth. So I really didn't have any performance complaints at all in terms of the way that this smartphone functions. A lot of the time, your applications are actually already going to be open, like your email client, so you end up not having to wait for the program to launch. Yeah, so speed, zero complaints about that. In terms of the keyboard, kind of some mixed feelings. If you're used to this style of keyboard, so before this phone, one of the phones I was using was the Samsung Blackjack II, and if you're used to this style of keyboard, it's really it's really not bad at all. And what ends up happening is you end up, generally speaking, at least in my experience, you end up sort of typing with sort of like the tips of your fingers, not necessarily, straight on. I sometimes found that I would use, almost like my fingernail when I was actually typing, but, you sort of just use this part of your finger. Now, that's a little bit different than, say, the HTC Snap, which has larger sort of rounded keys. And so I think that keyboard is probably one of the better ones I've used, but this one was certainly not at all hard to get used to. One of the things that Samsung touts, and Samsung and AT&T tout, is this this D-pad here. They have some funny word for it, some sort of accelerated scrolling, I think is what they actually call it. And frankly, I don't exactly know what that means, because when I press and hold down, it goes down just like any other Windows Mobile smartphone does. I don't really get why they would think that this was somehow faster or somehow worth mentioning. So I'm not sure if I'm missing something. If you're a Samsung Jack owner and you think I am missing something, you can feel free to post a comment and let me know. But yeah, it works pretty much like you'd expect. One thing that was a bit of a downer on this particular phone is that this is not Internet Explorer 6. So there are some Windows Mobile 6.1 smartphones out there that are shipping. It's kind of called 6 on 6 is sort of the general term, meaning it is Internet Explorer 6 as a web browser on top of Windows Mobile 6.1. And this is not that browser. This is just the regular, there's not even a version number here. It's essentially just the standard old Internet Explorer Mobile that frankly is a pretty awful browser. It's okay for mobile sites. You can see that this is all, this is formatted fairly well, but when it comes to actually browsing full desktop pages, it's just really slow and really not a particularly great browser. Now, that said, one of the other things that I actually I liked about this phone quite a bit was the battery life. So, you know, there are different ways that you can benchmark a phone, and there are different ways you can talk about, you know, the experience of using a phone. But, you know, for me, the biggest thing is, you know, does it feel fast? Do I feel like I can be productive? Can I, you know, send text messages really quickly? Can I send emails quickly? And of course, you know, how often do I have to charge it? Now, initially, my impression of this phone was I felt like I was having to charge it kind of more often than my previous phones, but you know, feeling something and knowing something are of course two completely different things. So what I did was I did a couple of battery benchmarks. On July the 7th, I unplugged my phone at 8:28 in the morning, and I just used it. I didn't do anything crazy with it. You know, I used it just like I would normally use it. I checked my email, you know, quite often throughout the day. Now, I do have an Exchange account, as I mentioned, a hosted Exchange account, and when I don't actually have push email turned on. I find push email to be a little bit irritating, frankly, in a way, for my particular needs. So I have it set up to sync every 4 hours between I think about 7 a.m. and I think 10 o'clock at night. So it isn't synchronizing as heavily as someone would do if they actually had, you know, full push email turned on. How long did the phone last? Well, it lasted until July 13th at 8:20 in the evening. So that was 6 days, 11 hours and 52 minutes. So basically 6 days, 12 hours. Now you might say, oh my God, how did you get your phone to last 6 days? Well, here's something else about how I use this phone. I don't really do a whole lot of voice calls. You know, I think I only have like 200 minutes a month, and I never use up that many minutes. So I would do, in that 6 days, I might have had, you know, 6 phone conversations. I might only really talk to one person on my cell phone a day, but I do use it quite a bit for texting, and I do use it quite a bit for email. So your mileage may vary. You know, I've had other people say that their Jack can only last them, you know, 2 days, and they need to recharge it. So again, it varies so heavily on how you use your phone. But from my experience, based on the tests that I did, I think that the Jack actually has very respectable battery life. Of course, you know, could it be longer? Sure, it would be awesome, you know, to be able to use it super heavily, you know, for 3 or 4 days, rather than sort of the light basic usage that I use, you know. And there are people that are going to be using Bluetooth headsets, you know, they're going to be talking a lot on their phone. Of course, their phone is not going to last 6 days. Now, in terms of other things that I liked or didn't like about it, I tested the camera a little bit. The camera's pretty good. You know, it's not fantastic, but I have zero complaints about it. 3.2 megapixels gives you pretty good images. To my eyes, I'm really into photography, so I compare, you know, photos to how my Nikon D300 looks. So these photos, of course, look awful, but the D300, you know, is a $2,000 camera body, and this is a, you know, $99 phone on contract. So you can't really compare the two, but it is safe to say that at 3.2 megapixels, the photos from this camera, I think, fall into the fairly average category in terms of quality. One of the things that I didn't like so much, I mentioned this in my video, but of course, you have to use this charging port, you know, for audio and for recharging. I really wish the charging port was on a bottom. I have this nice little station where I can plug in my phones, and this phone I had to put sideways in order to recharge it in this little charging station, and that's frankly a little bit irritating. This isn't a showstopper. It's just one of those things where when Samsung is, you know, designing these phones, I just wish that they would think, you know, okay, where, you know, where's the best place for us to put a charger? Up on the side, I don't think anyone would raise their hand and say, yeah, I really want you to put a charger on the side. In terms of fit and finish, I quite liked this finish on the back. So you can see that it's shiny, but you can see that as I'm touching it, the fingerprints don't kind of show up because it's not pure black. A lot of the other phones in the market, like when I looked at the Propel Pro, you look at it wrong and you get ugly, gross, you know, fingerprints all over. And so I'm quite fond of this fit and finish. It's nice and thin. It's quite light for its size. There are lots of other phones that are around this size that are quite a bit heavier, and I quite like the fact that this is nice and light. So yeah, overall, I would say that this is a really good phone. If you're interested in a Windows Mobile phone that is a you know, a workhorse, that has a good keyboard, you know, decent screen, decent battery life, this is definitely a phone to consider. Be aware that there is no word about whether or not Samsung will be offering a Windows Mobile 6.5 upgrade, so this may not be the most upgrade-worthy phone. And if you have a Blackjack II, I would say that it's not really worth upgrading. This is a nice phone, but it doesn't really offer any features that are heads heads and tails, you know, or above and beyond is what I'm trying to say. Boy, above and beyond the Blackjack 2. So stick with your Blackjack 2, but if you want to get a new Windows Mobile phone, this one definitely earns my recommendation. This has been Jason Dunn from Smartphone Thoughts. Thanks for watching.